if Donald Trump were offering that campaign speech instead of Joe Biden, how many of them would have then joined us in the ceasefire versus the 4 more year chant? Just because you are partial to Joe Biden does not give you a pass.
This is the 411 with Jessica Washington. Today I'm on with Reverend Darien Jones to discuss a protest at Mother Emanuel Church of President Biden's campaign speech in which protesters called for a ceasefire in Gaza. What was the energy in the room like in that moment when the protest broke out?
First, a bit of shock. There was not the expectation that people would be in the room protesting.
Without light, there's no path from this darkness.
If you really care about the lives lost here, then you should honor the lives lost and call for a ceasefire in Palestine.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
It's generally considered disrespectful to interrupt someone speaking. And so there was that bit of shock that, oh my goodness, this is actually happening. Somebody is interrupting the president.
I mean, when that chant of 4 more years started to drown out the calls for a ceasefire, what was going through your mind?
I was fully prepared to receive the backlash and the strong support for the president in response to the disruption. I think the misconception is that because this was a church and Mother Emanuel at that, those persons who were in the congregation and who made up the congregation that day would also largely be the normal parishioners, normal church-going people. And that wasn't the case. The people who were gathered there in Mother Emanuel were largely there in support of President Biden.
Among the people who were there who were members of the AME Church, did you feel any sort of disappointment that, if not that they would join in this protest, that they would try and drown out these voices?
I did not expect that many of the pastors would also stand and shout 4 more years. I think that action was a bit uncritical, but also in moments like that, you kind of get caught up in the crowd. And it's very easy to get caught up in a crowd. And so I think that's what happened for a lot of the ministers who joined really the shot 4 more years.
You know, many people have said in light of the fact that, you know, this wasn't obviously a memorial for the Emanuel 9 since the anniversary is in June, but it was a moment where people were talking about and honoring, you know, those lives that were lost, that some people have said this was inappropriate. You know, why did you think, as someone who was a part of the protest, not speaking at that moment, but a part of the planning, why did you feel it was an appropriate moment?
So I think the moment was appropriate because, one, I understood and was of the understanding, and many of those protesting and involved in the organizing understood the difference between a worship service and a memorial service and a campaign event. I think that if I am to be honored in death, then I at least want someone, or I'd like to think that at least someone would call my name and honor me that way. No memories were called, no recollections of their time in the church or their time in the community. None of that was offered. And so that, to me, did not look at all like a moment to honor their lives. Again, it looked like a moment for the president to launch a campaign.
Have you heard from other members of the broader AME Church, or even potentially from people in Mother Emanuel?
Yes, not directly. And one of the points that is consistently brought up is the sort of disrespect to the space. And to that, I offer the point that we are just being morally consistent, which is to say, if Donald Trump were offering that campaign speech instead of Joe Biden, how many of them would have then joined us in the ceasefire versus the 4 more year chant? Just because you are partial to Joe Biden does not give you a pass to raise your voice and to hold political officials and elected officials accountable for what's going on, not just in our country, not just in our local communities, but in the broader world.
As a pastor, as a person of faith, why was it important for you to be a part of this?
Faith without works is dead. Our faith requires us to act and to be active. Our church is founded in disruption, fighting for the rights of its people. And that for me is core, not just to how I practice my ministry as a pastor, but how I live out my faith as a Christian. And so I'll always find myself disrupting when and where it's necessary to end and speak out against the oppression of any group of people.